Dr. K, Karen, and to someone on the line like Babs Roberts, my former director of the Community Services Division, KJ. I'm a tall, over 40, melanin endowed queen of African, Blackfoot, Cherokee, Hebrew, Japanese, and Seminole descent, cisgender female, she, her pronouns. And because inclusive gender language is important to me, just fair warning, I do charge a virtual quarter for the virtual kitty for anyone who says you guys in my presence or the presence of anyone who identifies as she, her. So first, I must thank the legislature for creating this office and the governor, Governor Inslee, for giving me this opportunity to serve as your first inaugural director of the newly created Washington State Office of Equity. Please join me in giving a shout out to Aaron today, our interpreter, who's here making sure that everyone is able to participate in a way that is meaningful to them. Thank you, Aaron. Joining me today are Latasha, goes by Tasha Tisdale. Wave to the people, please, Tasha. And Cynthia, goes by Cindy Varley. Please wave to the people, Cindy. Two wicked, smart, and talented women who have agreed to help stand up this Office of Equity. And I am absolutely delighted that they have joined the team. You will be working very closely with them. So just before we get started, we would like to know who you are. And so I'm going to ask everyone to please unmute yourselves and shout out all together your name, the city that you're joining us from, and who you are representing today. So please go unmute yourselves and shout out your name, where you're from, and who you're representing today.
Amy Stout,
Harrison,
River,
Vernon Street Services Division.
Woohoo! That was amazing. Welcome. Now, if you could, please indulge us one more time and type your name and email address in the chat to make it easy for us to reach you in the future. Thank you. You are on the land of Indigenous and Native people, and I invite you to find out who they are. I currently am sitting in what is known as Thurston County, which has been the recorded homelands of Indigenous peoples for thousands of years. We have sovereigns to the south, the east, and the north, who continue today through the strength, resilience, and courage of their ancestors for the next 7 generations and beyond. And speaking of the next 7 generations and beyond, you can well imagine that reframing state government to work in a way that reduces disparities and improves equitable and just outcomes for everyone in Washington State for the next 7 generations and beyond is going to require more than just the work of the newly created Office of Equity. So while each of you are so excited that this office is here and that we are here, we're more excited that you are here because this work is going to require each of us. This is really the work of all of us. It's going to take the entire village and all of the villagers. Now, as Cindy pulls up the PowerPoint presentation, I'd like to take a personal point of privilege here and thank Jocelyn Nelson with the Disabilities Inclusion Network and Emily Heike and Elizabeth Gordon at the Governor's Committee on Disability Issues and Employment for making sure that today's briefing is accessible to all. Also, shout out to Pat Lashway and her team at the Office of Financial Management for providing the resources we needed to make it happen. As you'll see momentarily, we're not even a real office yet. And without the help of Pat and OFM and their resources, we wouldn't even be here today. And a huge shout out to Rochelle Davis, one of our senior policy advisors, for helping me even get these briefings announced. Truly a picture of leadership centered in equity in action. So today we're going to talk briefly about an overview of our office, why we're here, how we do, what we do, our 2021 Office of Equity timeline and milestones. We'll go over that. And we're going to also talk about our upcoming Look, Listen, and Learn statewide virtual tours. I realize that many of you are here representing your agencies, so I'll let you know when it might be a good time for you to take notes. But before we get there, you know, when you think about the Office of Equity, I don't know about you, but for me, it was like, oh my, where do we begin? What are we going to do? How are we going to do it together? Because many of you on the line have heard me speak, and you've heard me speak about being about liberty and justice for all, making sure that everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when I think about the Office of Equity, I really do think about it all boils down to these 5 words, you know, equity and justice for all. And so we're going to spend a few minutes this afternoon talking about our why, our what, our how, and what's next, so that when we leave this afternoon, you'll have a clearer understanding of why we're here, what we plan to do, how we plan to do it, and what we plan to do the rest of this year. So the why. Well, the legislature found that the state is becoming increasingly diverse. Representative Mia Gregerson and a host of legislators sponsored the legislation that made this office a reality. And as they were looking at the diversity in the state over the last several decades, they noticed that not everybody was realizing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, let's say. We had some inequities based on race, gender, ethnicity, and a host of other characteristics that began to deepen and continue to deepen, such that they come at a great economic and social cost right now. And I'd like to spend a few minutes reviewing those. Now, for those of you that I have acknowledged, for those of you who you know I know you, and you know I know you're here, you might want to just go ahead and unmute yourselves right now, excuse me, because you also know that I like engagement and participation. And so I'm going to ask Nicole to start us off and describe in words the data that's contained in this slide on race and ethnicity in Washington State. Nicole, Osa?
Yeah, yep, I'm happy to. So we're looking at a slide here titled Race and Ethnicity in Washington State. And it describes that the April 1st of 2020, the population estimate for Washington is over 7.5 million people. That's a lot of folks. And that this represents an increase of over 100,000 or 1.45% since last year.
Okay. And tell us what you see about the different ethnic groups.
Yeah, so what I see when I look at the little chart there to the side, I see that the ethnic groups are measured by white, Hispanic, Black, Asian, mixed, or other, and that the dominant group is white at, I'm squinting, I think it's 70.4% there. And the next largest group is Hispanic. That's my background. That's at 11.9%. And then below that, you see Black at 3.6, and then Asian 7.8, mixed 4.8, or excuse me, 4.4. Okay. And then we have the mysterious other at 1.9.
Okay, thank you. Let's give Nicola a shout out for being brave and courageous to be the first impromptu participant of this afternoon. And as many of you know, the chart is somewhat dated. We do refer to many as Latinx. So with this diverse state population growing even more diverse over the last decades, the legislature found inequities among these groups of people in various categories. And so who else do I have on the line? Jamie Stout, thank you for
Yes,
joining
ma'am.
us today. Talk us through the slide that you see on the poverty rate in Washington State.
Yep, happy to. So it's a slide, and the top of it, it says Student Successes Act Long-Term Goals. The table shows the four-year graduation rate for the class of 2018. All students was, for 2017, it was about 93%. 2018, it was about 80.9%. Black and African American, it was 71.5% and 74.4%, which meant that the target for 2018 was 73.4%. I don't think I understand this table. American Indian, Alaskan Native in 17 was 60.3. In 18, it was 60.4. In targeted for 18, it was 63.3. Asian for 17, it was 87.5. Actual for 18 was 90%. Targeted was 87.7. Hispanic or Latino, 17 was 72.7. Actual for 18 is 75.2, and the targeted 18 was 74.4. We're seeing exceeds annual target in all categories except for American Indian, Alaskan Native, and 2 or more races. Hawaiian Pacific Islander, actual for 17 was 68.1. Target for 18 was 74.0, and target was 70.3. White, the actual was 81.9. The actual for 17 was 92.7, and the target for 18 was 82.7. And then we have 2 or more races. 97.7 was the actual for 17. Actual for 18 was 80.7, and target for 18 was 80.8. Students with a disability, we're looking at the actuals for 17, which was 59.4. Actuals for 18 is 61.7, and targeted for 18 was 62.4, did not meet the annual target. Limited English was 57.8 for 2017. 64.1 was actual for 18, and target for 18 was 61.0. Low income actual for 17 is 70. Actual for 18 is 72.1, and the target was 72.0.
Thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
I don't know about you, but in one of the wealthiest nations in the world, leader in the global society, I wonder if the legislators wonder, why don't we have a target of 100% graduation rate for 100% of the students? And this slide, and for the 2 or more races, I always remember Dr. J looks younger than she is. But last century, it was if you had 1 drop of Black blood in you, you were identified for statistical purposes as Black. And I wonder of these 2 or more races what that demographic really is. And so I can see why perhaps when the legislature was looking at some academic achievement data, they saw some disparities. Michael Lenker, thank you, Jamie. Michael Lenker, DNR. Could you please walk us through this poverty rate in Washington State slide?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Yes, and congratulations.
Thank you.
So what we're looking at is the poverty rate in Washington State. And actually, there was some questions, I'm not sure if you saw them in the chat box, regarding the disparity of the percentages. Would you like to go back a slide?
We would not, thank you.
Okay, just.
We'll get to it later. Mhm.
Okay. And so we're looking at the poverty rate on this slide for Washington State, where it has then race and ethnicity. And you have African American at 16.3%, Asian American at 7.9%, Latino at 16%, Native American at 21%, and then white at 8.2%.
Okay, so they were looking at poverty. They also looked at the unemployment rate by race. Babs Roberts, could you please walk us through this slide? I know this one is familiar to you because this is a lot of work that you started.
It's definitely work that DSHS has done, and I'm happy to walk through the slides. This is the unemployment rate by race. It's Washington State data from 2010 through 2019, and it is broken down by race ethnicity. You can see in this, I'm gonna have to get closer, I'm not wearing my glasses. You can see in this chart, starting with an indigenous population, that over the 9 years that they're recording, that the unemployment rate, while it has come down across all categories, it is not coming down at an equal or equitable rate. So the indigenous population in 2010 had an unemployment rate of 21.6. This is, of course, the height of the Great Recession. It comes down, sort of bumpy, down, up and down to 2019, where it's 8.1%, still much higher than other populations. Black population in 2010 at 18.5, coming down a little bit steadier rate to in 2019 to 6%. Sorry, I have to move the box. There we go. Native American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders starting in 2010 at 16%, going up actually in 2011, 2012, before coming back down to 4.2 in 2019. Multiracial, very similar profiles, almost 16% in 2010, 6.2% in 2019. Latinx starting at 13.5% in 2010 and coming down to 5.2%. Conversely, we see that the white population started at a lower unemployment rate in 2010, just 10%, much lower than the other populations we see, and coming back down in 2018 to under 4% before popping up in 2019 to 4.4%. And then finally, the Asian Pacific Island, the Asian population starting even lower in 2010 at 7.6% and ending in 2019 at 3.5%. Unemployment is very varied by race.
Okay, thank you, Babs. Stephen Peck, have I heard from you this afternoon?
Key and I have been busy chatting.
Stephen, are you on the line? No?
I think he is on the line. I believe he's an ASL user.
Okay, thank you. Angie H., what can you tell us about race and ethnicity in jails and prisons? Let's focus on prisons.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Looking at these charts, it appears that starting through, looking at I'm absorbing here. Give me a second.
Just read what you have there for those who might not be able to see. So let's start with Asians.
So on the Asian, they're 10% of the state population, 2% of the jail population. For white, 72% of the state population, 61% of jail population. So for Latinx, 11% of state population, 12% of jail population. For Black, 5% of state population, 11% of jail population. And for Native American, 2% of state population, 5% of jail population. So for the Native American, Black, and Latinx, their jail population is much higher than their actual percentage of the state population.
Okay, What about prisons? Jacob Stewart? Can you talk us through
Yeah.
the prison data, please? Thank you.
Sure, as long as you can hear me, okay?
We can.
Okay, great. I see that there's a bit of a disparity in prisons and in the jails. With the Asians, it's 10% of state population, but 4% of prison population. With whites, it's 72% of state population, but 60% of prison population. The Latino, Latinx community, 11% of state population, but 13% of prison population. Native Americans, 2% of state population, 5% of prison population, and Black, 5% of state population and 18% of prison population. And what I see amongst these groups is that everybody except for the whites and the Native Americans are more heavily, those groups have a higher percentage ratio of people in prison than they do in jail. And that stands true for those in jail as well, obviously. With the white and the white population being the only one that is consistently lower in the ratio in both prison and jail than their percentage of population.
Thank you very much, Jacob. And so, armed with this data around disparities among groups racially, ethnically, gender, the state legislature created the Office of Equity. And that's where our Y comes in. Under the leadership of the co-chairs, Dr. Ben Danielson and Jan Olmsted, they were co-chairs of the Office of Equity Task Force and weighed in heavily by getting a lot of input from voices of a lot of people around the state to come up with what is the vision then for this office? What should the mission be in light of the growing, increasing diversity we're experiencing around the state and the inequities that people are experiencing based on their race, ethnicity, gender, and the like. And so our vision is that everyone in Washington has full access to the opportunities, the power, and the resources that they need to flourish and achieve their full potential. Our mission is to promote access to equitable opportunities and resources that reduce disparities and improve outcomes statewide across state government. And in the last few slides that and that's just a few, we can see that there's definitely much work for us to do. And also, Michael, thank you again. We'll address questions at the end of the session. So Cindy will go back in the slide deck to address the question that you pointed out. I believe it was around the poverty rate. So if everyone would just unmute yourselves, please. What are we, the Office of Equity, legislatively charged to do? Malene Henley, why don't you get us started off? What is our office charged to do?
Well, I can see in your slide here that you are charged to develop a 5-year equity plan for the state.
Thank you. So we're going to develop a 5-year plan. Tanya, what's the second bullet? Sarah Peterson, what's the second thing we're going to do?
We're going to help the state develop language access requirements.
And you're going to help us do that, aren't you, Sarah?
I certainly am.
You
Thanks,
certainly
Karen.
are. Thank you. Davida Miller, what's the third thing we're going to do?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
We're going to remove barriers to accessing state services.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Councilmember Lietta.
Thank you, Dr. J. We're going to decrease inequities across state government.
Okay, thank you. Chase, DNR.
Hi there.
Hi there.
We'll be helping agencies develop their own diversity, equity, and inclusion plans.
Yes. Lisa Boynton, what else are we gonna do?
Promote systemic and cultural changes by introducing best practices of change management to agencies.
Okay, and Heidi Werner, take us home. What's that last thing we're going to do?
Design online performance dashboard that measures agencies' progress towards equity goals.
See why the picture? Now, the beautiful thing is, for those of you who know me, you know very well that I already have a 5-year plan and I already actually know what needs to be measured. Yet there's an African proverb that I live by, and that is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. What Dr. Johnson knows really is irrelevant at this point in time. What's most important is that we together do this work in a way that makes not only sense, but in a way that eliminates these disparities and ensures that everyone in this state has an opportunity to realize life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, to have the access that they need to flourish and achieve their potential. And so we are going to definitely need you. So how are we going to do all of this work? Lisa Cook, what do you see on this slide?
Well, this is the how slide. And the first thing that we need to do is lay a strong foundation, which is centering equity in all of our operations, programs, and interactions.
Thank you. Lee Foster, what's the second thing we're going to do?
Second thing is maximize the system we have through stronger policy, integration, and collaboration across systems, sectors, and jurisdictions to make the most of the system we have.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Jody McBride.
We're going to build the system we need. Begin to dismantle racism by addressing root causes through bold systemic and cultural change.
Thank you. If you haven't had a chance to read the Blueprint for a Just and Equitable Future, the 10-year plan to dismantle poverty in Washington, led by a group that Babs Roberts on the line is overseeing. They started the work. The Poverty Work Group, Lori Finks and others are involved, and I would highly commend it to you. And when I saw this graphic, I said, that's it. This is how we envision doing this work in the Office of Equity. And I don't know if we've had an opportunity to see anything being built lately because we've been sheltered in place and whatnot. But before pre-COVID, if you can think back to if you ever saw a house or a building under construction, you notice that there was a hole in the ground, seemed like for a whole long time. And they're down there in the dirt. And what they were doing was digging deep enough for the earth to stop moving. So they could put in these things called piles where the earth stopped shifting so that they could begin to lay a solid foundation upon which to build the structure. And then when you drove by, it seemed like the frame was up, and the next thing you know, the house was built and people were moving in, and that didn't seem to take any time at all. Well, there may be times when you be thinking, oh, we're so glad that the Office of Equity is here and Dr. J's here and her team is here. But what are they doing? It looks like there's just a hole in the ground. Yes, there will be, because we're going to be working to center equity in all of our operations, our programs, our interactions. Centering equity in our laws, in our WACs, in our policies, our practices, our programs, our procedures, and that's going to take some time because we only have one time to build a solid foundation well and to build the right foundation. Because if we don't, just like with a structure, if that foundation is not solid, I don't care how beautiful the building is, it's going to come tumbling down. Similar with this work. If my grandma Alice were still alive, when I think about maximize the systems we have, she would say, Annie, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Now, I don't know what that meant because I was a literal child. Why would you want to throw the baby out at all? But nevertheless, what she was basically saying is, don't get rid of everything. And that's what this means. We want to strengthen policies and our collaborations and our interactions across systems, across sectors, across jurisdictions to make the most of what we have. I think of a seamless, world-class, integrated service delivery system that's centered on equity and justice for all, that's centered on the people that we serve, so that we have actively engaged staff who deliver superior services each and every day to satisfied Washington residents in a way, as Babs Roberts would say, that reduces disparities and in a way that makes sense to the people that we serve, in a language that they understand, right? Because we want everyone to flourish and achieve their full potential. So we're not going to destroy everything initially, because we are, in building the system that we need, understand that in order to address and eliminate many of these disparities, all of them really, we're going to have to begin to dismantle racism by addressing root causes through bold, systemic, and cultural change. And for the record, while our office is tasked with leading with race, just know fundamentally, we're talking about dismantling oppression and privilege and power. So that's where the equity and justice for all comes in to our body of work. When are we going to do all this? So what's next? Well, first we need to get rid of whatever this is. What's next? Here are our timelines and our milestones. I know many of you are wondering, well, actually you're thinking, oh, we're so glad they're there because they're going to do this, this, and this. Well, just for the record and in the spirit of transparency, we're thinking, we're so glad you're here because together we're going to co-create and do this, this, and this so that everyone has an opportunity to thrive. And so initially I'm here, yay. The team, part of the team is here, yay. And so for the next couple of months, we have to really become an office. As I mentioned, we're not even a thing yet. And so we have to become a thing. We have policies, procedures, practices, protocols to put in place. The only reason why we know where the restroom is because we are at home. That's how new we are. And we don't even have a home when we can go back into the office because we'll be moving. The Office of Equity Task Force gave us an org chart to start from and some positions. So we have to identify what positions will we really need to do the work? What is the work, which will inform the positions? What structure should we have? And then we have to initiate a branding and identity campaign. And what we're thinking of is a statewide campaign, and because we want a logo that when people see it, they think, I'm at home. I feel included, valued, heard, welcome, right? And so we're going to get some input, hopefully from young people, high school students, college students. But we're going to ask everyone around the state, when you think of equity, what do you see? We're going to launch our statewide branding campaign. While that's going on, beginning at May and June, and this is where, for those of you who are here representing your agencies and need to report back, this will be the place to take notes. In May and June, the entire month of May and June, virtually every day, all day, we will be having look, listen, and learn virtual tours. Now, if we go up to the state agencies section on the slide, at that time, Agencies are going to, we're going to ask them about their current state. You know, where are you around equity, diversity, inclusion in your policies, your programs, legislative implementation schedules? We're going to ask for demographic data. Who are you hiring? We're going to ask for contracting data. Who are you paying? And we understand that all of this disaggregated data may not be accessible by race and ethnic category, but that's what we want to know, because fundamentally we might need to put those systems in place while we're doing some of this work. So that's an opportunity to get from the agencies who's doing what, where, because our outcome, our result, our deliverable from that look, part of the look, listen and learn the look session, is we want to be able to compile an equity, diversity, inclusion inventory where we will have captured in one place the great work that is going on across the state, as well as within state agencies. That's look. For the listen and learn portions in May and June, we're going to listen to agencies, and we're going to ask to create an equitable, diverse, inclusive, respectful, anti-racist workplace culture. What is that going to look like? What do you need, and how can we help you? For communities, we're going to ask, well, for everyone in Washington to flourish and achieve their full potential, what will that look like? What needs to happen? And from agencies as well as community members, we're going to ask you, what do you want us to know? Because we're not all knowing. What do you want us to know? And who do we need to know? Who else do you need for us to reach out to? And who are we going to reach out to? Well, we plan on meeting with people in the governor's cabinet, the governor's office of Indian Affairs, all the ethnic commissions and BRGs, the ombuds, people in criminal justice, housing, minority contracting. We want to meet with nonprofits, the Panhellenic Council members, labor, government at the state executive branch, legislative branch. On the map here, you'll see we'll be meeting with legislators during interim session this year. We want to meet with members of the judiciary branch. They've already reached out to us to say, hey, we think we have some work to do together. People in healthcare, media, arts, entertainment, businesses, the education system from pre-K, K through 12, post-secondary education, voc tech, community colleges, everyone. So, and if we've forgotten anyone, then that's why we want you to tell us who else should we be talking with. Because fundamentally, I really believe that you have the secret sauce. All we're gonna do is collect it. Because
Disability community.
Well, thank you. They're in our BRGs. We've got, yes, we have DIN. Yes, so yes, Governor's Committee on Disabilities and Employment. They're part of our business resource groups in the state. You have the secret sauce and we want to collect it, because what you tell us in May and June is going to then inform our 5-year strategic plan, because we want to make sure that we're focusing on the right things and have the outcome measures so that we can talk about specifically where do we begin to bridge opportunity gaps, and specifically where and by how much did we reduce inequities. So that work will begin in the summer after we get staff. We're on schedule to hopefully hire 5 more staff in July 1, and they will begin to start putting together the 5-year equity plan, our outcome measures based on what you've told us and what we already know, begin building that dashboard and world-class one-stop shop gold standard website with the logo that when you go there, you'll feel included, welcome, and at home. And you'll go there knowing that you can get world-class best standards, best practices, literature, resources, books, book club discussion points, how to hold conversations on race, as well as you'll be able to find the agency dashboard that we're required to build that measures the performance of each agency on the metrics that we identify. In the fall, our team will take some time then to start planning for 2022, as well as finalizing that equity plan and submitting budget requests to make sure that we are properly resourced to do what you are asking us to do. In the fall, we will have created the template for state agencies to use to submit their equity strategic plan and their budget requests. In November, we'll start communicating out statewide what our plan, 5-year strategic plan is. In December, my team will be resting, reflecting, and celebrating. So we do ask that you don't email us in December with any work, but that you just tell us how much fun you've had partnering and co-creating our Equitable Just Washington together in December, so that we're all rested up and ready to implement and execute in January on our 5-year statewide equity strategic plan. And with that, are there any questions?
Dr. J, I see a couple of questions here. There's one that said from Christy, it says, I know one of the task force recommendations was to include statewide language access coordinator as part of the staffing. Oh, my screen changed. I'm so sorry. And when do you envision bringing that role into the office is the specific
July
question.
1st, 2021. July 1st, 2021. It's the 1, 2, 3, fourth bullet, begin to address access. We're going to start with language access, but we're really doing universal access. Access for language, physical access, digital access, age access. So universal access strategy is what we're envisioning, but we'll be focusing on language access and certification starting July 1. So if you want the position or know anybody who wants the position, feel free to let me know. That position is July 1, 2021.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Can you sort of give a quick overview of the coordination work that you will do with the BRGs and the different agencies, DEI initiatives? I'm on the OFM DEI Council, and we've been working pretty hard to get things started.
Yes, not yet. I won't know that until we have our look, listen, and learn session in May or June, and you all tell me what it is that you envision and what you need, how you envision us working together, right? What one thing you'd want our office to do. So I'll better be able to answer that question after we do some look, listening, and learning with the BRGs, particularly since we have Executive Order 21-01 signed by the governor, really providing, I think, what we're going to need, what the BRGs are going to need, the business resource groups, to do the work that you're charged to do. So I'm looking forward to those conversations when we meet with every single ethnic commission and business resource group in May or June. So we have about 1 minute left.
There is one other question. Why are the targeted grad rates for different groups so I think that the person meant to say disparaging.
Okay. Well, and thank you for going back to that slide and reading that question. Well, that is going to be your learning assignment. I would encourage you between now and when you meet with me, go find out what you think is the reasons why we're seeing disparities in educational outcomes among the various groups. So that will be your homework assignment, and we can have that conversation when we meet. It's way more than the 60 seconds or so we have left. Thank you for asking it.
Joshua, I don't know if I'm saying your name correctly. Was that that was the question I read in the comments?
Okay.
Yes, it was. My name is Josua Holowatz.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Latinx, Hispanic, male, WDFW Region 5 out of Ridgefield. I've been a 5-year member of the WDFW Diversity Advisory Committee, one of our founding members. And I am extremely excited that the state of Washington now has an Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I am working with our chair and co-chair for our committee to extend an invitation to you to come speak to our group. We meet quarterly. We have 25 members who are volunteers, but serve 2-year terms. And we've collected a lot of the demographic data that you've been discussing. We've looked at the old goals that we set for agency back in the 1980s and have tracked some progress. And unfortunately, our agency has actually shown no real growth in diversity as far as the demographic makeup of our staff.
Okay, thank you very much. And Cindy Varley and Latasha Tisdale will right now write in the chat box how you can contact them so you can be sure to forward that invitation to us. It is 4:16. I apologize for keeping you over time this afternoon. And I thank you for coming and spending part of your day with us. We look forward to spending quality time together with you in days to come. So keep the calendars open. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you. It's so good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay healthy.
Thank you. It was great to meet you.
Likewise.